Hey everyone, wanted to show off something cool that I've been working on. So I got the OPXY back in November and have been really loving it. I love that it's got 8 full tracks, it's multi-timbral, it feels like you can just really get a lot done with it. And I really love kind of going into different synths and being able to control the sound design of things. It's been a real fun time to play with. One of the few things that I haven't been very happy with is just that I'm not very talented in music theory. So it really takes me a while. I kind of understand the idea of chords and how to harmonize with them, but finding something that's going to work together just feels like it really slows down my process. And I started looking more into different gear. Like I was really excited about the Oxy One as a sequencer because it can kind of auto harmonize, but it just felt like, wow, this is like a big waste because I've just bought this $2,300 thing or something like that. And like, shouldn't this just be enough to get going with? And one of the other things that's kind of really fascinated me for a long time with the whole DAW-less movement is like, we've got these phones that we're carrying around with us every day, and could we make better use of them? And so one of the things that I've been playing with, this is an Android phone, and here, let me not record my password going into that. And one of the things that's really cool with Android is it runs a sort of native version of Chrome that can kick out Web MIDI. So these two devices are connected right now. And I'm going to show you this app in more detail. But basically, it's got, we'll do this with screen sharing so you can all see it a little bit clearer. But basically, it's got 5 tracks laid down here. It's got a drum track. It's got some kind of chords that are going down. It's got a basic melody that kind of contours and harmonizes around with that. And all of this is just from loading a web page on this thing. And we'll see how we can kind of tailor this and use it as sort of a different approach to a DAW. So after connecting this, if I just hit play, I kind of get something that's already starting to work. And I can go in and sound design more here, change the filter. And this is kind of the stuff that I think is more fun to do. And what's interesting with this is the phone basically becomes kind of the sequencer and brains of the operation. You could always record that onto a device like the OPXY. Something else I should say is the OPXY just happens to work with this. There's nothing about this web software that's really very particular to the OPXY. It's a little bit smarter in terms of the default channels that it sets up, but you could use this with practically anything. I've played with the, let me grab it here. And sorry, by the way, for my video shooting. I'm not really a professional YouTuber. I've been playing with the Polyend synth that's also multi-timbral and can hook up really great to this. So let's dive into some screen sharing and take a look at how this software works and how you could use it. Okay, so here we are in the actual web page that's running here. And the first thing I want to kind of demo is that it's very extensible what devices it can work with. So you can see I've got the OPXY hooked up here, as well as the Polyend synth, which I really love because it's got a lot of different engines and has a little bit less of the OPXY just kind of has a certain sound to it. It feels like that I haven't really had good luck breaking out of, but the Polyend just really has a lot of control. So we can map where things are going. So we can say, oh, send this one out to the Polyend. Now I'm going to undo that because I want this to go out there. So we'll do that. And devices are really something that is very easy to extend. You don't have to be a genius coder to do it. So right now I've created the OPXY, the OPZ, and the Polyend. And basically all you do is kind of put a map in of, okay, what MIDI CC ties to what thing. So filter cutoff, for example, is MIDI CC 74. And you're really just declaring that in the code. And these ones are all kind of generic across. So in the kind of sound design of this, if you just address filter cutoff, it's going to work for any device that declares that here, versus some things are a little bit unique. So, okay, for the ACD, the saw mix is some proprietary thing that's unique to the Polyend synth. So you can kind of have a mix of very normal, standard things like your envelopes and what's going on with your filter. and also get very custom things for each device. So that's kind of the first thing that's going on here is it's very extensible, very easy to add new devices. If you can do even the most basic coding or use an LLM, you're going to be able to add whatever MIDI devices you want to add. Like I want to go in at some point and do all the Electron stuff and get that working in here, but very extensible. The next kind of concept that's going on is the concept of patterns. So patterns are also very extensible, and there's a bunch of them that are in the system. So actually, the best way to see this is just to go up here. All of these add news that I can do to add new tracks are basically different patterns that are built into it. So you can see we've got something that's a starter for chords, drums, melody, bass, and some arpeggiation. But really, this is the tip of the iceberg. It's very easy to add a pattern. Again, very simple. If you can just say, hey, I have a method that you can get notes from me somehow, and you can get the length of the pattern. That's all you need to do to build a pattern. And you could get patterns that are very purpose-built for maybe a certain genre of music, or also different parts. Like as you can see here, we've done a bass pattern that's different than the melody, etc. And each of them kind of has some settings that go along with them. If you're a coder, this is sort of the constructor that you passed into it. And you can see for chords, I tried to keep it really simple, at least for me, to not need a lot of music theory. I don't know exactly how a different chord is going to sound. So I just put them in some different groups of like, okay, what's a really warm sound, bright, dark, etc. How long should it be? How complex should it be? Like, should there be a seventh and a ninth added to it? Should there be inversion? So all this is controlled there. And if I make changes to it, so here's my current kind of sound that you can maybe hear. Sorry, I don't have the audio directly mapped in. And if I start to change this, like let's make it mysterious, let's make it a little shorter so we can really hear what's going on, and we'll make it more complex. And I'll click update pattern, which will just update it right away. So here we go. And we'll solo. So you can kind of hear what that did. We can extend it back out. We can make it dark. What we can also do is enqueue a pattern. So that's only going to trigger when these number of steps have run out and kind of catch it the next time around. So it might sound better in your arrangement. So do that. You can you can kind of hear how that's changed the sound a little bit. We'll go ahead and hit stop on that. We'll unsolo this. So each of these patterns has a whole different set of settings that go with it. Something I should mention real quick is none of this UI is tuned to work super great on a mobile phone yet, but I think that'll be pretty easy to add. So drum intensity, if I play the drums again here, we'll solo them so you can hear it a little bit better. So we can kick the intensity way up. This flavor is kind of really the drum kit that it's using. So let's use something more standard. And you can hear that that's gone up. So those are patterns, and you kind of get a sense of what's going on there. I'll go ahead and hit stop. And patterns are very powerful. Like I said, very easy to add. The next great thing is patterns really work with the arrangement part of this software. So the arrangement is really inspired by this book I read called The Addiction Formula, which isn't anything that fancy. It really just kind of elucidates some ideas around how you can kind of build energy in songs and how you want to change that over time throughout a song to make it really interesting to listen to. And the simple method that I built to keep it really easy for now, eventually I think we could add more, is just being able to set hype. So if I hit play, I can bring the hype way down, but I can also hit high, and you can hear it's almost kind of a cacophony. So that might be too high. Let's bring it down to medium. You can kind of hear, we could mute some things. We could take the chords out of this. Take the bass line out. So you can kind of hear we get some different powerful tools for arranging without needing to do a lot of work. And I think eventually over time this can keep evolving. What's really neat is that all of these kind of hype settings, tension as well as there, and that's really changing what kind of chord voicing we're using, whether it's going to load up tension in the song or really release it and maybe bring it back to home. All of these patterns are really coded with that in mind so that the chords are going to react to kind of what the hype level is, what the tension level is. I could probably go into more detail in a separate video about kind of how the inner mechanics of how that all works. But the idea is really to get something that's very easy to arrange and start to draw out a track in just a couple minutes to get a sound that you like. There's also some stuff built in here for doing LFOs. I won't go into too much depth on that. And you can also do sort of LFOs that are maybe more one shots or sweeps, so something that's emerging more over many steps, like doing like a riser or something or a swelling resonance, like different things like that. And those are all wired up in the software. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is just kind of where I see this going long term. So one of the things I'm going to be working on is making this. Right now, you can see this grid is really big. It works great on my desktop computer here, but it wouldn't work super great on a phone. So I'm going to be working on kind of changing this UI to be really easy to run on a phone. Right now, it's limited to Android phones because they're the really only ones that support Web MIDI. Unfortunately, Apple phones just don't have that in Safari or really any of the browsers on those phones are ultimately running kind of Safari under the covers. So we're kind of stuck with Android here. But I want to make the UI more sensible for that, add some more devices, and start to add different patterns. The other thing that I've done as I've built this is I've tried to document everything. So everything is really carefully documented, everything that you can do with it. So one of the fun things that I think would be able to do is you can actually get the system state out of this, and it will tell you like here is exactly what's playing, and here is sort of the programming language of how you modify this. So one of the things that I've been really inspired by is this tool called SonicPi that's kind of a live coding environment for music. And it uses these things called live loops, which is actually very much built into the system. So each of these tracks that you saw in this UI is really very similar to a SonicPi live loop, or if you've used title cycles, um, which I think is out of the Haskell community, very similar idea. And so under the covers, you could actually use, if you're a coder, you could use what's called a REPL to be able to modify any of these loops, the code for them on the fly. Something that would be really powerful with this is you could, instead of using, the OPXY has step components that are really powerful for randomizing, but you could basically write code that's going to randomize the pattern instead, which is sort of the sky's the limit then in terms of the complexity of what you could build there. You could tap into what's going on with the rest of the song. So this whole framework kind of exposes whether we're on, is this the upbeat, the downbeat, what chord is playing right now. So all of that you have access to. So you could do some very powerful pattern building, randomization, generative music, I think would be really powerful with this. I think also something we could do is build really interesting sound design capabilities. So this is a prototype I built that kind of connects different things. So like, okay, if on my drum track, I want to have an XY pad that one dimension is how many hat hits we're getting, another is ghost snares. Like it's kind of the sky's the limit in terms of whatever controls you want to have over your sound design and arrangement, because it's all something that we can see under the covers what all the devices you can do uh, have enabled for them. So a couple things, and I'll close it out because I think this is getting to be a long video. This is all open sourced. I'll put a link in the video to this repo called TonicMIDI. All of this is open sourced. You can play with it. You can fork it. You can add patterns. You can add more devices to it. I will try to help. I'm not really a full-time open source community manager, but if you submit a pull request for this, I will try to get that merged in so we could just keep making this better, make it work with multiple devices. This is also just a web page that you can go to. So if you're not a coder and you don't want to self-host this yourself, you can just go to tonicmidi.com and you'll get whatever version is up there at the current time. I'm kind of working on this in real time, so um, bear with me as things change and move around, and hopefully we'll get this UI better so that it looks better on a phone. Um, so yeah, that's Tonic MIDI. Hope you all get some value out of it and are able to play with it for some of the devices you have. And let me know what you think. Thanks, everyone.